Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Dr. John Avendano, President of Florida State College at Jacksonville, and it is my honor to welcome all of you who have joined us this morning for today's virtual FSCJ Business Speaker Series event. We truly appreciate you taking the time to join us this morning from wherever you may be out there. And I am truly grateful for your participation and that we are able to have the ability to continue to host events like this and bring us back together until the time we can be face-to-face once again. So today's conversation relates to how in this interconnected world that we must be vigilant about securing our information to keep ourselves and our businesses safe. We've all heard the situations where compromised information has caused serious, devastating impacts to our businesses and to ourselves personally. And some of you may have even had this situation happen to you personally. I know that I have in the past. We're hoping that today's workshops and keynote address will give you some helpful ideas and tips on how to avoid these unfortunate and stressful situations in the future. For today's event, we've assembled a team of professionals in the fields of information security, information technology, and business who will share their expertise so we can better prepare and protect ourselves in the future. Because this area is always changing, I know that there is something that we can all continue to learn. And as the community's college, we also are always on the lookout for opportunities to partner with our community and our local businesses and leaders in the area so that we can learn about their needs and do our part to help them in their workforce development needs. As part of this commitment, we also want to provide educational opportunities that support those needs to secure and enhance businesses and industries for a strong future. I'd like to recognize one of our wonderful community partners who believe in our mission and in strengthening the future of our community through continued education. Their support is what makes this events like the Business Speaker Series even possible. And so we are continually grateful to First Florida Credit Union and their CEO, Brent for their continued support and their ongoing sponsorship. They made a generous donation back in 2017 that inspired and provided the financial resources that were necessary to develop the Business Speaker Series and to host each of these events. With their support, and in addition to the Business Speaker Series, we are working with First Florida Credit Union to enhance the Financial Skills Academy as well, which provides certification courses that build financial literacy for students, our faculty, and staff, and they are equipped to be knowledgeable in earning, investing, and spending in the future. We are also exploring avenues that will allow us to expand the education even further to serve a broader populations in our community. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to do a few introductions, if I may. We do have a couple of our District Board of Trustees who are joining us out there today. So please join me in welcoming Trustee Mike Bell and Trustee Laura DeBella. Thank you both for being part of our presentation this morning. If you've attended these events in the past, you may have noticed that today's format will look a little bit differently than before. We have several workshops that you can attend. I know that you will be hard to choose, so each of the workshops will be offered again during a second session beginning at 11 a.m. this morning. Then our keynote address will begin right after them at noon. So in just a moment, you'll be prompted on your screen to select one of the first breakout sessions. At the conclusion, you will receive instructions on how to select the next session following the brief break. So with that, again, I thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you once again to First Florida Credit Union for your ongoing sponsorship. Thank you.
Everybody here has had the problem where they can't get their video working or they can't get their microphone working. And I just want to tell you all now, don't worry about it. And here's why. A few years ago, I was on a meeting. It was a presentation, a public presentation by one of the key architects of the GoToMeeting solution. And before he gave his presentation, he could not get his audio and video working. And at that moment, I decided that if he can't get his audio and video working, then honestly, I'm not worried if I can't either. So, but we're going to talk about the inside man We're going to talk about email compromise, business identity theft. I'm going to tell some stories. Now, one thing to please note is that I cannot see the questions. So if you have questions, we're going to take them at the end, but please enter them into the chat, whatever. If you're not comfortable doing that, feel free anytime. My contact information is below. You're welcome to send me emails. You're welcome to call me or follow me on Twitter. And don't follow me on Twitter. I'm boring. But if you want to message me on Twitter, that works as well. So we're going to talk about email compromise and identity theft. I'm not going to do an introduction to myself. This is my bio slide. It's always out here. The one thing I am going to say is I want to point out the pictures. I love those pictures because all of the people in costume, well, not all of the people, because obviously one of them, two of the people are my kids, but those are me in costumes I've built and done. The Chewbacca is my current favorite. When I wear it, I am 7'5". And I'll make the offer if you guys are here in Jacksonville and you want to, you're welcome to come by the office and see the Star Wars stuff. It's here. The only requirement we have is you have to wear masks when you're in the office, which I think is reasonable, right? So that's us. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to talk about cybersecurity, right? I mean, like that's such a broad topic, but it's an important topic. It's one of the ones where I find over the years, and I've been doing this for too long. And it might not be the right way to say it, but I'm old. I really am. Matter of fact, I just got my first set of progressive lenses is how old I am now. I actually have to change my glasses when I'm in front of my computer. So sad. But I've been involved in cybersecurity for a long time. I've been involved in IT for even longer. I actually got my first professional job working for a company, writing software and running their network in 1991, right? Now I say that because I wrote software that helped control power distribution through the power grid. Okay, I worked for a small company in South Florida, and we were doing a contract for this organization that releases equipment for power companies. I'm being vague on purpose. Now here's the part that makes this relevant. I wrote that code in 1991. I was an 18-year-old kid, right? I had graduated high school barely. I signed up for college and I dropped out for this job, right? It was one of those things where, hey, we got this job, we need you full time, you'll do 6 months, and then we'll pay for your college. And I wrote software. About 3 years ago now, I guess, I was at a power company doing a penetration test, right? And the penetration test I did, we found my software running in the power company from 1991. Now, you can probably do the math that 2 to 3 years ago was not that close to 1991, right? Yet my code was still running there. I'm a bad developer now. I can't imagine how bad of a developer I was back then. And that's a security risk, right? And I know we're not talking about development today. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm just saying we've been doing the wrong thing for a long time, and we need to think about what it means. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you can impact it, how you can be a target, how you, and I don't mean the store, how you can be the person who actually exposes your organization, your family, yourself to a lot of risk and threats. And we want to talk about how we can stop that. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell stories. I'm going to talk about topics and then give you examples from my job, what I look at. And I want to be very clear that when I talk about it, I want you to remember what I do for a living. Okay. My primary job, I'm the CEO of Secure Ideas, whoopity-doo, right? That's a fancy title for head nerd, okay? What I do for a living is companies hire me and I attempt to break into their systems. I try to break their systems. I try to steal data from them and then tell them how I did it. Every bit of my job is related to that task. I'm either doing that, I'm breaking into the company, or I'm testing them to see if I could break into the company, or I'm talking to them and consulting with them about how somebody could break into the company, or I'm educating them about people breaking into the company. See, there's a lot of breaking into the company in this conversation, right? And the reason I'm pointing this out is when I tell the stories, I may say something like, well, you know, when I broke into that bank and stole $3 million, right? I'm going to leave off a couple words because I tend to forget to say them. And those are with permission. So please don't walk away from this talk and say, man, Kevin's a hacker and he does all this stuff that's illegal. No, 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 no. I am a hacker, but I don't do this stuff that's illegal. I only do it with permission. So please add those terms to the end of every story I tell. Okay, so we're going to talk about cybersecurity, and then we're going to discuss various threats and the risks you may have and what that means and why that's important. Then we'll start talking about social engineering, okay? Because when we talk about business email compromise, when we talk about those types of identity theft, whatever, they're almost always social engineering, okay? We'll talk a little bit about exploitation, and then we'll wrap up. It's not on the agenda here, but it's something important. We're going to talk about how we solve the problem, because it is solvable. Now, there's no magic wand, okay? I'm not Harry Potter. We're not able to say, do this and it'll fix everything. We also are not going to tell you about a product you buy that will fix everything. The reason is, if anybody does tell you, hey, I'm selling a product and it'll fix cybersecurity for you forever, just punch them in the throat. Just don't even hesitate. Punch them right in the throat, because that person is lying. There is no product currently, and probably never will be, that will fix cybersecurity, especially, as we'll talk about with social engineering, the user vector, okay? Notice I didn't say the user issue, okay? Users are users. We're all users, okay? So cybersecurity. This is actually, this is a dumb slide, right? But I thought it was funny. I went out, I'm writing the talk, and I thought, I wonder what types of images you get when somebody says cybersecurity. Because let's be clear, this is what most people think about, is the imagery they see. And this is what I got. This is literally the first 3 rows of a Google image search for the word cybersecurity. I did it 2 words, that way in case your search is slightly different, right? I don't care if you spell it 1 word or 2 words, but here's what we get. We get lots of glowing imagery, right? There's locks, gotta have locks if you're talking cybersecurity. You also have to have hoodies. Hackers are always in hoodies. This is how you find them. If you're ever curious if anybody in your organization is a hacker, walk around. If they're wearing a dark hoodie, they probably are, especially if they're pointing at stuff. For some reason, according to Google Images, cybersecurity, you have to point at things while it's glowing and you're wearing your hoodie. I say this not just to, I'm not just trying to make a joke. Like, don't get me wrong, I giggled when I built this slide. I did. I have no good sense of humor. I have a sense of humor, it's just not a good one. The reason I think this slide is important is because when people think about things, whatever those things are, whenever somebody has been said, hey, this is something you should be concerned about, this is something you should worry about, what we find is the images they see in their head become very important to the success of teaching them how to fix it or resolve it, right? So if I learned this from my kids, right? Both of my daughters are homeschooled. And I want to be very clear, we're not nut job homeschooler parents. I mean, we may be nut jobs, but we're not the stereotype of a nut job homeschooler. We homeschool because I travel a lot for work, and many times my family will go with me. And so it became easier. But when my daughters were learning, and I hope they're still learning, but when they were learning things, what we found is when we could give them an image they could relate to, an image they could understand, it was much more likely that they were going to be able to learn that topic and understand the topic. And the reason that's important is because these images, these slides are crud. This isn't what hacking is. I would love it, man, except the hoodie. I hate hoodies. I don't know, it's something about the hood on top of them. I don't know, I just don't like them, right? But I wish when I opened up my laptop, I got these glowing, floating things that I could put. How awesome would that be, right? But it doesn't exist. It's not real. And so when people look at this, and this is the image they see, what they've done is they've disconnected from the reality. And it becomes something that's, yeah, it's other people's issues. It's other people's problem. And us security people, us security nerds have made it worse because we act like we're on this ivory tower, that we look down on those peasants, that, oh, those users, right? And everything just is this disconnect. So stop thinking about this, because the reality is security is important. Here are just a couple stats, just a couple things, right? That I got. These are on the internet. I didn't make these up, right? I tried to give some credit, right? Varonis came out and said 95% of breaches are human error. Now, I want to be very clear. When we talk about things like this, right? Like, oh, 95% of breaches, please keep in mind that we're only discussing the breaches that somebody found, that somebody knew about, that somebody realized was a breach and reported it. The second half is very, very important, okay? The end reported it. We see way too many people that they get hit, thank you very much. They get hit and they don't know it. I've worked cases. I do expert witness work. I used to do incident response and forensics. I don't anymore. God, I don't want to do that anymore. But we've seen cases where we go in. I worked this one case, and I can't discuss who, what, where, whatever, right? The company got hacked. They didn't realize it for a while. Data was stolen, things like that. And I want to be clear, from looking at the case later, in hindsight, the initial entry vector was the compromise of a pretty high ups in IT's person's email. They got access to email, as we'll talk about later. They got access to the email and then pivoted via the email. Now they became a trusted source, right? Like, how many people, you get an email from a friend, you get an email from a coworker, you don't question that it came from the coworker or came from that's a trusted person. Okay, they were breached, they were hit, the attacker got in. They realized it a while later and they contacted a company. The company came in, did some forensics, things like that, and they thought they had contained the breach. But 2 months later, they found signs they had been compromised again. Now, originally, they thought this was a second compromise, okay? When we got involved, what we realized was all three of the compromises were one compromise. The attacker got in the first time. They got in by email. They pivoted out into the organization. They started stealing data, taking control of systems, what have you. Somebody came in, tried to contain the attack, right? Because that's containment is one of the steps of incident response, okay? They thought they had contained it and then remediated it and got the attacker out of there. A couple months later, the attacker started activity again. They just assumed it was a new attack. They brought in another company. If I recall correctly, it was the same company as the first time. They treated it as a brand new breach. They tried to contain it. They thought they did. And then about 3 months later, maybe it was 2 months again, the attacker came back. And at that point, I got involved. And when I got involved, we started looking at it. It's like, wait a minute. This is the same attacker, right? Like, and I don't mean a dude, right? This is the same group. This is the same team that has hit you. And they've just dwelled in your system. It's called dwell time, right? How long can an attacker stay in there without being detected? Or how long can they stay in there without being detected? And then after they're detected, without you realizing they're still there, right? So I would consider all of that dwell time. And this went over, this entire process actually ended up being over a year. that the attacker was there, right? Stealing data, compromising systems, screwing around with the company, okay? 95% of the breaches that people know about are caused by a human error. Now, I want to be very clear. We can say human error. Mistakes happen. Okay. One of the things we hear all the time is, oh, those stupid users. Don't say that. And I want to admit, I used to say that. I just did, right? Those are the words I just said. But users make mistakes. And as we'll talk about, we set systems up that it's harder for the user not to make the mistake. We actually set up systems to be vulnerable. We don't mean to. It's just the way we've designed them. Now, IBM came out last year and said that the average cost of a breach in 2020 was $3.86 million. Now, I'd like to say, Secure Ideas, we've been around, we're in our 11th year. We've been around for over a decade. Blows my mind that we've been around this long, right? We've got 22 people, we're hiring, and we're growing. We expect, if everything works out, we're probably gonna be closer to 30 people by the end of the year. I could not write a check for $3.86 million right now. I mean, I could write it. It would bounce. My wife, who owns 51% of the company, would kill me. But the average cost of a breach is $3.86 million. That means some breaches are higher, some breaches are lower, right? That's a lot of dang money. And that, my understanding is that number doesn't even come into account lost revenue. That is just actual money spent on fixing the problem, detecting the problem, the people power to get it working, those hard costs, not the, hey, we got hit, we had to tell people, and now we lost business because we got hit, right? That's not in that number. Let's make that worse, right? The average time to identify a breach, according to IBM's research, IBM's expertise, they do incident response, right? 207 days. From the time the attacker got into the system, 207 days before somebody noticed there was a breach. And the worst part about that stat, the worst thing, the thing that keeps me up at night, well, one of many things that keeps me up at night, is that that number is an improvement over previous years. We're getting better, and it still takes most of a year to notice that somebody's in your system. And we're talking, they're actively in your system, not, hey, I had a breach, they did something, and 207 days later, I realized something happened. No, we're talking about somebody got into the system, somebody compromised your email, somebody is using your account to exploit and pivot and do bad things, and it took you months to realize it. That's a problem. So what do we do? Well, part of what we're doing is today, right, is we need to understand the pieces to make this up. And here's why. Like I said, I have been doing this for a long time. I do presentations like this all over the place. As a matter of fact, I just got off of a different presentation right before this one for a different group out west. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I don't know why people keep asking me to talk, but they do, and I'm willing to do it. What I realize is most people have heard about hackers. Most people understand breaches. If I walk up to you, if I say, hey, Ernest, and I'm just going to use Ernest as an example because it's the first person on the list. But if I say to Ernest, hey, Ernest, are you worried about hackers? It is highly unlikely that he would say, no, I don't know what a hacker is. Of course he knows what a hacker is. It's in the movies, it's on TV, the news. I was on the news Sunday about this event, but Sunday, oh, hey, what about this? Right? What about hackers? What about, well, security? Everybody knows about it. But most people, if you say to them, hey, are you worried about hackers? The answer is yes. If I say to them, are you worried that an attacker is going to get your data? Their answer is going to be yes. If I say to them, are you worried that the attacker is going to compromise you? They're going to hack you. They're going to compromise your system. I think the number was 70% of people would say no. They say things like, I'm worried my company will be hacked. I'm worried that they will compromise my bank account. But if you say, are you worried they're going to hack you? The answer is no, they're not, because most people don't actually understand what the risk is. They don't actually understand what the threat is, and they dang straight don't understand what exploitation of those two are. I'll give you an example. I was teaching a class up in DC, and unsurprisingly, there was a large number of government employees, okay? And there was this really nice lady in the class, and she had her laptop, and she was a really nice person, really smart. I want to be very clear. She was one of the main researchers at this high, like, oh man, like DARPA cool stuff, okay? Smart person, really smart woman, really smart, really smart. I can't stress that enough. And I was helping her with her computer with one of the exercises in class. And as I'm looking down at the computer, I'm looking at the keyboard. It's a laptop. And I see on the laptop that with a Sharpie, notice I didn't say Post-it notes, with a Sharpie, there are usernames and passwords written on the laptop, right? Yeah. Now, think about that for a second. Think about that for a second. She has usernames and passwords written in permanent marker on her laptop. First off, the storage of username and passwords on your laptop is crazy, okay? But they're written in permanent ink, which means she's not changing them, right? And there are a couple that are crossed out. There's something else written underneath them. So some are being changed, but not many, okay? So I say to her, what the heck is this? She's like, oh, I can't remember all the passwords I have to do. And she's pointing out passwords. She's pointing them out. That's my email. That's to the corporation, like the government agency, whatever. And then she says, but look at this really cool thing. And at the bottom, you know, the wrist rest at the bottom of the keyboard, right? She has taped a credit card down on the laptop. I said, why do you have a credit card taped? And she said, oh, that's my online shopping credit card. That's the one I use for online shopping. I'm like, but it's on your laptop. She's like, yeah, but look, it's okay because I can flip it over. She had only taped the top edge so she could get to the CVV code on the back. Like, what the heck? This was crazy. And again, this isn't because she's dumb. It's because she doesn't understand what the risk is. She didn't understand why having passwords that never change is a problem. Now, her reasoning was, this is my laptop. Nobody's going to get my laptop. It's mine. I can control it. And that is a reasonable thought process. We can disagree. We can talk about laptop theft. We can talk about that kind of stuff. But if you had to have physical access to that laptop, that's at least some level of control. Please do not walk away and say, Kevin said it's okay to write passwords on my laptop. I'm not, right? But what she didn't understand is that by having those passwords that never change, that exposes her to a much bigger risk that's going on. So what do we want to talk about? We want to talk about and understand what threats and risks are, because we talk about it, right? Oh man, that's a threat. And I don't mean, hey, I'm going to kill you. That is a threat, but that's not what we're talking about here, right? In cybersecurity, a threat is a negative impact, a potential negative impact. Sorry, got to be very clear, right? And then when we talk about risks, we have technical risks. We also have business risks, and we have to consider both, especially when we talk about things like business email compromise, business identity theft, right? We have to understand the risks to the business, okay? So what are threats? Well, they're everywhere. They are. So what are they? Well, like I said, according to Wikipedia, potential negative action or event, right? So we've got things like hackers, okay? We also have users. There are malicious users, right? There are users who like, forget this place. My boss pissed me off. I hate everybody. I'm stealing, Snowden. I'm stealing this stuff. We also have users just making simple mistakes. They click a link, they use weak passwords, they don't turn on MFA or 2FA, whatever. Another threat that many people mistake, but I say that on purpose, we miss it when we talk about security, and that is errors. People make mistakes. People have errors. There's errors in your data. There's errors that we deal with. Okay, so we got to think about that. All right. Well, what about risks? What are they? Well, there's lots of different risks. Okay, a risk is what will happen if that potential negative event that is the threat is no longer potential, right? If we drop the word potential, we just say, hey, there was a negative event. Somebody compromised that email address, account, somebody got in the front door. Next week, I'm flying on site to a customer to physically break into a bank. That's going to be fun. Just to be clear, I've done it before. Vaults are not that interesting, but contrary to what the movies show, the risks are things like business loss. Most people will think about that. And I don't mean the business closes. That is a risk and has happened, right? But what is the loss the business hits? Hey, money happens. We lost, somebody stole this money. Somebody stole this data. Somebody stole that. Then there's the legal penalties, right? If you're an organization and you have data and you lose it, there are legal penalties. HIPAA, for example, which by the way has 1 P and 2 A's, not the other way around. Sorry, pet peeve. HIPAA has penalties built into it. GDPR has penalties. This is California's privacy laws. And I know many of you will say, but Kevin, we're in Florida. We're not in California or the EU. Don't care. If you have customers in the EU or you have customers in California, you do business there. If you have business partners, if you have vendors and things like that, you run into some problems. Plus, Florida has breach notification laws. If you don't do a breach notification, there are penalties here in Florida for that. Then the other one is contractual penalties. This is one that a lot of people don't think about. And I'll give you an example. I was working with this organization. It was a movie production company. It's kind of cool. When we went on site, they actually gave us an explosion schedule. And I said to the security guard that I was checking in with, I'm like, why do I need an explosion schedule? Like, what is this? And he was like, well, that way you know the ones that you have to call the police on. I'm like, what do you mean? Oh, and that's what it hit me. It was like, okay, explosions are a normal thing if, right? So we're there and we're doing this, a talk just like this one. We're talking about business risk, what things. And I said, okay, what are the crown jewels for you? What, as you as an organization, what are you most worried about? And this is a question you should think about for your organization. What do you worry about losing? What is the most important thing you have? And people were saying things. Remember, this was a movie production company, and people were saying, well, the movies that haven't been released yet, the films, right? If that gets out, we'll lose money. That's bad. Yeah, okay, good one, good one. Somebody else came out and said, our contracts with our distribution channels, because, right, we don't want our competitors to know. Yep, okay, good one, good one. And then this lady stands up and she says, the cell phone numbers of the celebrities in our movies. And before I could say anything, the other people in the room were like, no, that's not, no. And she's like, no, it is. It really is. It's a big risk for us. Excuse me. And it started this, we're not going to call it an argument, but an argument, right? And people are like, no, celebrities can afford to change their cell phone number, you know, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no. And she like stood her ground, like, no, this is one of the biggest risks we have. And finally, I let it go for a little bit as people were talking about it, because it was interesting, right? The exercise of, hey, is this a worry? Is this a concern? And I finally stopped and I said, okay, ma'am, you know, because you guys know I was raised in the South. Your choices are ma'am or sir. That's, you're going to be called one or the other. I said, ma'am, why are celebrity cell phone numbers such a risk? Could you explain your reasoning? She said, oh, it's really simple. We sign a contract with their agents or their agencies or them that it is one of the pieces of information that we have to protect because of stalkers and other things like that. And that if we don't protect it in the contract, it says, here is the financial penalty. And it's huge. that if we lose that cell phone number, it's a financial penalty because of the contract. I'm like, well, then you're right. It's a risk, right? And everybody in the room was like, oh man, I hadn't thought about that. I didn't know that. And it was like, here are people who worked in the field, that people who worked in the same company, some of whom were on the same team as this woman, right? And they didn't realize that contractual risk, okay? The last one on here is one that people talk about a lot. I always laugh when people do, and that is reputational harm. Don't get me wrong, reputational harm is real, right? If you get breached, if something happens, it's gonna hurt your reputation. If your email address gets hit, people are gonna ding your reputation. I think it's less important than most people think. And the reason I say that is because we forget things real simple. I'll ask a very simple question. How many people in the room still shop at Target, Home Depot, or Best Buy? Right? All three companies have had massive breaches that were in the news for weeks, if not months, right? Yet we still all shop there. I know I do, right? I'm probably going this weekend to pick up wood at Home Depot because I need to get some stuff set up, okay? But reputational harm is something we want to think about, okay? Phishing. 93% of breaches, according to Verizon, that's 93% of the breaches they investigated in 2018, a little bit older, but the number has stayed pretty standard, were caused by phishing. For people, if you don't know, and I'm assuming you do, but let's say, right, we need to understand what this means, as we've talked about already. If you don't know what to look for, if you don't know what the attack is, so let's actually talk about attacks. Okay, let's start digging into these. Phishing, spear phishing, whaling, I don't care what you call it. By the way, all three of those are similar things. The differences are, phishing is, I'm going to send a fake email pretending to be something to try to get people to respond to it. And it's going to go out to lots of people. Okay. Spear phishing is a targeted attack. So instead of me sending it out to 1,000 people, I'm going to send it to the 10 people on your accounting team, or I'm going to send it to the 20 people in your development team, whatever, right? Whaling is when it's basically spear phishing, but you're going after like the CEO, the CFO, right? Like high up in the organization, the executives, the board of directors, whatever. But it's the same thing. It's a targeted phishing attack. So what is a phishing attack? That's pretty simple. It's an email-based attack. Yes, I know we can do them over phone calls. We can also do them over text messages, what have you. But email is the one we're talking about today that pretends to be something. Sometimes it's like, we noticed a login attempt to your email account from an unrecognized device. Click here to verify that it was you, whatever, right? Or, hey, your Netflix credentials or this. The attack, all they have to do is come up with a ruse, right? A con man trick to get you to do what they're asking you to do. That might be clicking a link, might be calling a phone number, might be opening an attachment, typically clicking a link, okay? And they try to make it be something you would react to normally. Now, there are absolutely phishing attacks that are just so bad. I remember I collect phishing emails. I like them. I get a kick out of them. So if you have any cool ones, forward them over to me. But one of my favorite ones, I got it. And it said in the email, right? The email was from Bank of America. So it was like accounts@bankofamerica.com. The subject line was your Wells Fargo account, which I thought was funny. And then the body of the email was like, your BBVA login has been compromised. Da, da, da. And I'm reading this email and I'm thinking to myself, that's 3 different banks. And as far as I know, look, I'm not a banker, right? But as far as I know, none of those 3 banks are the same. But here's the worst part. I actually looked into it. That attack was successful for a lot of people. And I can just imagine, either they didn't read it completely, right? Or they did read it and somehow made the assumption, well, I don't have those two, but I have that one, right? I don't know. It's just, but people fell for it. Most of the time, the ones we're concerned about are the ones that look real. The one that looks like it came from your HR group, the one that looks like it came from your accountants, right? If you ever want to trick me, have it look like it came from Lucasfilm, right? I don't know. That's the best I can come up with, right? But they're gonna look real. They're also going to have something about them that makes them urgent. Okay, that urgency, what we find when we talk about ruses or compromises like this, what we find is that by creating a level of urgency, we get somebody to react before they think it all the way through. One of the things we've done successfully is we talk about open enrollment. A few years ago, almost 4 to be exact, we did an email attack with permission, where we wrote out an email that came from supposedly the head of HR. And it said, due to the recent election of Trump and the modifications that may happen to the ACA, and I want to be very clear, I'm not being political. I don't care about your politics. This is the thread. We use something recent. Trump had just been elected, right? There was all this news about what was going to happen to the Affordable Care Act. And again, don't care your politics, not discussing mine. We were trying to create relevancy and urgency. So we made it relevant by talking about the election and the ACA. Then we said, because of all of that, open enrollment for your benefits isn't in 2 weeks, it's this week. We've had to move it to this week. Please click the link below to enroll for your benefits for next year. If you don't click by Thursday close of business and log in and set up your benefits, you will not have insurance at the new year. Okay. Now let's be very clear. None of that was true. Not only did the election have nothing to do with when open enrollment is, I can't imagine that would actually change something, right? No matter who was elected. Second, open enrollment wasn't in 2 weeks. It was about 6 months away when we talked to the customer. And it wasn't from the head of HR. We had gone on LinkedIn, we found the head of HR's name, and we used their name and email address and pretended to be them. We had something like a 95% success rate. People got that email and clicked the link and they logged in. And when they logged in, they got a message that said, oh, I'm sorry, your account doesn't work. Please try again. And we redirected them over to the real HR site so they could log in. We got like 95% of their staff. When we talked to our customer, the 5% of the staff that didn't click the link, they're assuming we're on vacation, that they just hadn't gotten to the email. We tricked everybody, including the head of HR. The head of HR received the email, clicked the link and logged in, tried to log in at least. We captured their credentials, right? And when we talked to them later, let's be very blunt, the head of HR was furious that we had used their name and email address. And okay, I get that, right? We had gotten permission to do it, not from the head of HR, but from security. And what we talked to them, and we actually explained, and they calmed down a little bit, was that if they had really been attacked, that's what would have happened, right? They would have spoofed that name and email address. So they calmed down. They clicked it, and they even said they knew when open enrollment was, but it sounded so plausible that they just assumed they had missed an announcement or something in their team, and they clicked it. We got their credentials. Okay, so we add urgency, we add relevancy, and realism. We try to make the email look like what would actually come. Okay, another thing that makes this really, really easy for us when we talk about email compromise is weak credentials. And we say stuffing, what we mean is password stuffing. Here's the problem. And I'll guarantee you that, okay, I'm not going to guarantee it, but I bet you that every single person on this call, this webcast, including myself, have websites that they reuse passwords on. I guarantee it. One, people reuse passwords all the time. It's just easier. Passwords suck. Nobody likes remembering them. Who wants to remember capital B 4S 3H at symbol 1 exclamation mark, right? Who wants to type that? By the way, that spells baseball, which is a weak password, even though it actually meets most complexity requirements on the internet today, which is sad. But people don't like typing passwords, so they will pick one that they reuse and they'll use it again and again. And notice I said, even me, I have sites, I have a throwaway set of credentials that if I don't care about the site, but I have to log in, I'll throw these credentials out there. It's that way I don't have to save them. I don't have to, I just know it. And that's not recommended behavior. I'm acknowledging I'm an idiot. Okay. What happens is if you reuse those credentials, keep in mind, even if the credentials are just slightly different, some people will do like, they'll set their password to the site name. So it would be like Google 2021, and then Twitter 2021, and then Facebook 2021, right? Well, let me be clear. If Facebook's passwords get compromised, and I know that your Facebook password is Facebook 2021, I'm gonna bet that your bank password is going to be banking 2021, or the name of your bank 2021, or the credit union, or whatever. Your Twitter password, right? See, so even though they're different, they're similar enough that I get the pattern. Okay. But if you reuse them the same way, the number of times we find credentials on the internet, right? So such and such an organization got compromised, their passwords were leaked. I get the passwords and I see, okay, here's a password for Larry. Let me go see if Larry's password at work is the same. Is it? That's bad. Okay. That's password reuse. The stuffing is us trying all of those passwords. Okay. So what happens is we get these credentials and then we're able to use that to compromise the email account. Okay. Either by guessing it because you used weak passwords, or because you've reused passwords. This leads to a business email compromise, right? Please note that right off the bat, we're talking about people not turning on multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. That's bad. We see that problem quite often. Or if they do turn it on, they still fall for attacks, right? So I do want to talk a little bit. We've been focusing on business email, right? This talk really talks about business, but keep in mind that personal email compromise is in often cases worse than business email. The business email compromise is really, really bad. If you were able to get into Kevin@securitedeals.com and send emails as me, that would be really bad, right? From a business perspective, from a personal perspective. But if you get access into my personal email address, bad example, my personal email address is Kevin@securitedeals.com. I own the company. It's my personal email. But if you get into that account, right, you have access to do password resets. All you have to do is go to a site that I use, say reset my password. It'll send the link to my email address. Done. You're in, right? You also have all the data. So personal emails are very, very common. Everybody's got one, right? Almost everybody. And very, very often we cross boundaries between personal and business. An example, I already talked about open enrollment and insurance, right? How many of you deal with your insurance via your personal email address, even though it's a work benefit, but you do it on your personal email because that's where you talk to your doctors, that's where you do everything else, right? I know that my insurance, it has multiple email addresses attached to it that get the notification. Now, for me, that's because I can't function in life without my wife. She handles all the important stuff. So she has to get access to my insurance stuff, is right. But a lot of people will use their corporate email and their personal email. So it crosses a lot of boundaries. The other thing that people don't think about is they don't think their personal email address is sensitive, right? They consider the business email address sensitive. And a lot of times your business email, I say a lot of times, unless you're the person managing email for your company all of the time, your business email is managed by technicians, people who know or are supposed to know what they're doing, right? And so a lot of times for me as an attacker, if we have the ability to do it and it's in scope, we would go after a personal email address first and then leverage the personal email address to get into the business email address. So don't forget about your personal email address. Don't lose sight of that concern. Okay, so let's talk about what we do. Right, there's 3 steps when we do a business email compromise, and I struggle saying this because I have to admit, when I was in high school, I worked at McDonald's. I actually became a manager at McDonald's, and so every single time, even now, when I see BEC, I immediately think bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. I don't know why. It's just boom, done. Bacon, egg, and cheese biscuit. Because that's what we sold at McDonald's. How sad is that? That is what you ever think about the things that stick in your head, right? Like it's just crazy. I can tell you how long it takes to cook French fries, or at least how long it took in 1989 or whatever it was that I was working at McDonald's. BEC, not bacon, egg, and cheese. Even though bacon, egg, and cheese is good together, there's 3 things we want to look at. Okay, so we have the compromise of the email account. Now, I want to be very clear here. We're not talking about I send an email that pretends to be from your email address. I'm talking about I have compromised the account. I can log in to the system as you and do things in the system as you. Okay, I'm reading your email, I'm sending email. That's what we mean by business email compromise. So how do I get in? There's 2 main ways. Okay, and we can Spanish Inquisition this from Monty Python and come up with a 3rd way, and then a 4th way, and then a 5th way. But there's 2 main ways. 1, phishing. Plain and simple. I trick you into telling me your email address and password. That's simple. Hey, sometimes the trick isn't even that hard, right? I've actually posted questionnaires on Facebook and MySpace, for those of us that are old enough to remember that, that basically said, please type your email address and password, and people will do it. You just gotta give them good reason. But so phishing, we send them an email, we send them a notification, something to get them to click, give us their account credentials, and we compromise the account. The other way to do it is if you use weak credentials on your account, and let's be very clear, if you are not using MFA on your account, disconnect now and go fix that. You don't need to listen to the rest of this. Don't disconnect now. But you have to use MFA. I know some people hate it. You got to pull up your phone and get that rotating number, right? That sucks. Whatever, do it. It doesn't protect you completely. I can still get into your email account, but it makes it way the heck harder. Okay. And by making it harder, it's kind of like, do you remember The Club? It was one of those late night infomercial things. It went on your steering wheel, and the idea was, I can't believe I'm using this example, but okay, let's go with it. The idea was you bought this thing. It was probably 3 low payments of $19.95 or something like that. You put the club onto your steering wheel and lock it. And the idea was that somebody, if they broke into your car, they couldn't steal your car because they couldn't steer, because the club would hit the windshield, right? And here's the thing. The club actually did not protect your car. Do you know how long it takes to take a club off of a steering wheel? A grand total of 45 seconds, right? You basically slice the steering wheel, pull the club off, done, gone, and you leave. Don't do that. I'm not teaching you how to hack, okay, or steal things. The goal was not to prevent the theft of the car. The goal of the club was to get the car thief to move to the next account or car, right? If I'm in a parking lot, I want to steal a car, and that one has a club and that one doesn't, I'm going there because it's easier. Same thing with your email address. If I go after your email address and it doesn't have MFA and that person's does, I'm going after your account, unless this is targeted. And then I'm going to take the extra effort. Okay. But let's make them take that extra effort. Okay. So the two ways. Then after compromise, we want to assess what we've got as the attacker. If I've compromised your email address, I assess what I've got access to, right? I'm going to read emails. I'm going to see what data I've got. I'm going to see what systems that talk about the number of times. I know you have it. You have an email in your inbox or in your mailbox that is the initial username and password or the initial sign up link or the reset my password link that you forgot to delete, right? I find that, I click the link, see if it still works, and I reset your password. Now I no longer have access to your email. No longer just have access to your email. I also have access to this other system. Okay. If the link to reset your password doesn't work, I can ask for another one, right? I've now gone to the system. I know you use it because you've got the email in your inbox that lists it. So I go and I say, reset my password. The link comes back. This one works. Okay. The other thing I do is I start reviewing contacts. Who do you talk to? Who are you working with that I can now send an email to and pretend to be you? I'll even read your email and then draft things similar. Like, hey, you know what? My name is Steven, but I sign my email Steve. Okay, then when I send an email as you, I'm going to sign it as Steve because I see that in your sent items. I see that in the quotes when people reply to you. Okay, you have this cool little slogan you live by. Oh, professionally evil, whatever, right? I'm going to put that in the bottom of my email when I send it as you. So I've got to assess what I've got. I'm going to look at contacts. Plus, let's be very clear. I look in your contacts and you've probably stored passwords there. You've probably stored sensitive numbers there. People do it all the time. Oh, here's the contact for my account manager at our supplier. And here is the account number. And here is the secret code, right? Because it's all in one place so I can use it. And that's in my contacts. That's bad. By the way, I didn't mention it earlier. And we will in the next thing, but I want to say it here. Password safes are awesome for you, not for me as the attacker. If I attack you and compromise you and you're using a password safe, you just made my job amazingly harder and you made your life amazingly easier. Okay, because you can use different passwords, you can use very complex passwords, passphrases, and you don't have to memorize them because the password safe does it for you. Okay, so I'm going to assess what I've got. Did I get access to the right person's account? Do I have access to the data I want? Because I may be done, right? You have the data I want. Done, boop, done. Okay. Then we exploit what we've got. Okay. We're going to steal any data we have access to. Think back to your business email. How many spreadsheets of ridiculous amounts of information do you have in your email? Because somebody doesn't know how to use a file share, right? And they sent it to you, not you, them, because you, of course, know, right? So I'm going to steal what data I have. I'm going to leverage the fact I have access to your email to hijack other accounts. I've talked about that, resetting passwords, doing stuff like that. And I'm also going to pivot to other contacts, right? One of the things I see all the time, let's be very clear. I'm going to go after the CEO, but I'm not going to go after the CEO because the CEO has access to everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go after the CEO because the CEO very often will email their administrative assistant, and the administrative assistant has access to everything. But if the email came from the CEO's email address, there's a better chance they'll trust it and act on it, right? We see it all the time with companies. They'll send in an email. I worked with a company that got hit pretty hard for this one retirement account. They compromised a personal email address of this guy. And he had lots of money invested in this one financial services company. This is not a Jacksonville story. This is one of my customers elsewhere. And what happened was they compromised the guy's personal email address and they emailed the investment organization, the investment company, and said, please withdraw $125,000 from my 401k. Here's the approval, all this kind of stuff, and wire it to this account that I've given you. Now, this investment firm had strict policies that said, if you got an email like this, here's the validation process, here's this issue. But here's the problem. That guy was a pain in the butt customer. You know them. I'm a pain in the butt customer, right? It's one of those people that's just constantly demanding and yelling about stuff and complaining. And every single time that he would ask for something and they would say, oh, what do I do? Right? And he would like, stop bothering me. Just do what I said. So they withdrew the money and transferred it. Yep. He was pissed. Okay. So how do we fix this? Because that's the important part, right? I can talk to you about all these stories. I can tell you about how just recently I was working with a healthcare organization and one of their high up people got their email compromised, and all the attacker did was go in and start sending phishing emails to every one of their contacts. They sent out a few hundred emails to people phishing, and those people, now here's the funny part, those people wrote back and said, whoa, wait, have you been hacked? Is this real? Did you get hacked? Because let's be very clear, when you get an email that looks like it's hacked, for some reason, the normal reaction is to email back. Here's the problem. The attacker still had access to the account. So the attacker responded, no, I wasn't hacked. That is real. Please click the link and do it. And there's a good chance people did, right? So how do we fix it? Can we fix it? Yes, we can. I feel like Dora the Explorer. One, education. We have to tell people this is actually a risk. We have to tell people it happens. Let them know what's going on, right? Explain all the stuff I just explained to you. Then, after we do that, right, we have to maintain an awareness of everything we're dealing with. As we get these emails coming in, right, as we get these requests coming in, we need to be aware, is this a real thing? It's possible that it's not. And so what we need to do is, as they come in, as they do things, as we're being asked, hey, click here and do this, don't just do it. Perform some level of validation, preferably more than just emailing them and saying, hey, were you hacked, right? But here's the thing, if you're getting a request that's out of the ordinary, right? Transfer $125,000 to this account. Hey, you're the accounting people. Please pay this invoice that you have now immediately. It's late. You're going to be fined. Don't just pay it. Don't just click the link to pay it. Because remember, right? Many times they're not trying to get your money. What they're trying to do is get you to click the link to log in so they have your credentials to get more money. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to validate it. Pick up a phone. I know we hate talking on the phone nowadays, right? Everything's email, everything's chat, text, whatever. Now, call. If you get an email from me that says, do this, 904-403-8024, call me. I'll answer the phone and you can say, hey, Kevin, did you send this email? And I'll be like, what email are you talking about? Or I'll be like, yeah, I did, right? So validate it, perform some type of validation. It amazes me how many times people will get an email from a coworker requesting something, and they won't even just pop their head over the cubicle wall and go, yo, hey, did you do that? It's that, hey, is that real? Is this, or talk to somebody else. Make sure your process is to do things that are sensitive. Remember, I said, think about what the crown jewels are. Think about what you're worried about, and make sure the processes that can impact those worrisome items have validation built in. Here at Secure Ideas, right? My wife is probably the target you want to go after. She does all of our payroll. She does all of our banking. She does all of our, she works with our accountants. She handles all of the money. You want to steal money from Secure Ideas, she's it. But here's what happens. If you were to get access to her account and transfer money out of her system, the bank, if anything more than $125, I don't know why $125, goes out of the bank account, all three owners of the company get an email that it went out. And the reason we do it is not because I don't trust Denise. It's because if something happens where her account is compromised, I'm going to see that email, or Jason's going to see the email, or she's going to see the email and go, whoa, wait a minute. Why did $50,000 just go out of the bank, right? Validate everything. Pay attention. Paranoia is not bad if they're really out to get you, okay? So I'm going to open it up for questions at this point. That's a horrible saying right there at the end there. I'm going to open it up for questions. I believe we've gotten a few.
Hi, Kevin. This is Jill Johnson with Florida State College at Jacksonville. I will be moderating the chat. I have not seen any questions come through quite yet.
That's okay.
I think you were so thorough that everyone really learned so much.
Or I just was so boring, people shut off. It's possible.
I don't think that was the case, but we'll give it another few seconds. I did send a message out. There's one that's already come in.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on using Microsoft Authenticator for passwordless sign-in?
Yeah. So I think where it works well. For example, I have it on my phone. When I log into my Office 365 account, I use their authenticator to do that. I think it works well. The problem is it is nowhere near comprehensive. It is nowhere near enough across the board, but I do like it. Another place that uses it is Blizzard. If you log into your World of Warcraft account, you can use their authenticator app as well. Similarly, they still use passwords. Keep in mind, though, that if you're using Microsoft's Authenticator for passwordless sign-in, you still have a password. There is still a password on your Microsoft account. So don't think passwordless is real. That's a marketing term. So I hope that helped.
Great. So the next question is, what do you think about password generators?
I like them if you can use them. For people who don't know, a password generator is a piece of software that will generate a password that is used for that site. Let's say I'm using this. They're normally part of a password manager, where, something storing passwords. There's two problems I've seen with password generators. One, I actually prefer passphrases. I like passphrases because if you ever have to type it, it's a sentence, it's longer, it's complex, it's got uppercase, lowercase, special characters, numbers possibly, right? And password generators don't tend to do that. The other problem with password generators is quite often the password generator doesn't know the requirements. So I've seen cases where the password generator will generate a password that doesn't actually work for the website, but the website will accept it at registration, but then not let you log in. So I tend to just use passphrases, but password generators are great.
Great, thank you. We do have a couple more questions coming in. What are your favorite personal cyber apps for phones?
I'm not even sure what a cyber app is. So I really like Angry Birds. And I apologize. All serious, I'm not sure what you mean by a cyber app for my phone. So I don't want to.
Maybe they will chime back in and give us a little more clarification. We'll move on to the next question and come back to that one. How about that?
Yep.
How do you correct a hack on your Facebook account?
How do I correct a hack on my Facebook account? One, I don't get my Facebook account. No, I'm just, it depends on what you mean by a hack on your Facebook account. If you mean that they've compromised your credentials, then what you have to do is just get your password reset again. You may be able to do it through the normal password reset if they didn't change the contact information. Or you may have to reach out to Facebook directly and say, hey, that's my account. It's been compromised. Please help me. The other one that a lot of people call a hack is somebody will create an account that mimics yours. They'll copy your profile picture, your name, stuff like that. You can't do anything with that other than report that to Facebook as a fake account. But it's also not a compromise of your account. Your account is, if somebody creates a Kevin Johnson account and uses my pictures, it doesn't affect my account at all. It affects my friends who have connected to it.
Got it. I did get a little bit of clarification. The personal cyber apps are apps that protect your phone. That's what they were referring to.
I don't use any. I use an Android phone. I leverage Google's systems. I've got MFA on every account that supports it. I've gone that route. I find that things like antivirus for your phone and things like that, they just aren't effective. So I don't have any that I recommend. What I would do is, if you're using your phone for business, talk to your IT people to talk about how to do that.
Great. I have a couple more questions. What is your opinion on password expiry policies? What's a recommended time frame?
I go with the NIST requirements, and I don't expire passwords, but I require very complex passwords and multi-factor. I find that, as NIST says, that if we force people to change their passwords, what it ends up doing is encouraging weak passwords. So if you can't enforce complex passwords, then 30 or 60 or 90 days, depending on the sensitivity of the data. But I recommend that if you can't support complex passwords and you can't support MFA, don't use that system. So I rather not expire passwords. All you do is piss off users if you expire passwords.
So there was a question, and you mentioned again, what is MFA?
Multi-factor authentication. I log in with my username and password, and then I have to type a number that came in the Authenticator app, or I have to respond to a text message or something like that. It's another factor in authentication, or another form. So username, password, and something else. Might be a fingerprint, right?
All right. It's been said that businesses and others should put their data in the clouds in case there's a disaster and you lose the info in your computer. So when using the cloud, you can then pull that data. How safe is using the cloud?
I think it's an awesome question, and I hate the question. The reason is, how safe is the cloud? It depends. This is similar. If you're old like me, you'll remember when Linux first came out and people are like, oh, Linux, Windows, or people now still Mac, Windows, right? Now it's cloud, data center. It doesn't matter. Everything can be very secure and very insecure. It depends on how you use it. Secure Ideas, we have embraced the cloud architecture, not because of security, but because of availability. Your answer of, hey, if I've got my data in the cloud, it's much less likely that I'm going to lose it, right? Excuse me, I'm sorry. But if I set up my cloud accounts badly, we use AWS and Google, right? It's no more secure than my laptop if I set it up badly. So it's a great question. I recommend using the cloud when you can and if you use it effectively, but you have to consider that it is a different system and you can't just set it up the same way you set up your laptop. Okay. So I hope that helped.
Great. I recently read that using a cell phone in any way for the second step of multi-factor authentication is flawed security. Can you share your thoughts?
I knew this question was going to come up, and it makes me angry. Not at the person who asked the question. It makes me angry at the security people that are touting that answer, that don't understand what they're talking about and don't understand the risk. You hit my hot button, my rant button, and not because of you, not because of you. So here's the problem. SMS two-factor authentication, SMS multi-factor authentication is weaker than other forms of multi-factor authentication. If I do a SIM swap and I get access to a SIM that pretends to be your phone, I now have access to your SMS messages, which means I have access to your SMS two-factor authentication. Here's the problem. I think the number is somewhere around 75% of cell phone users in the world do not have a smartphone, right? Now, keep in mind that 83.6% of all statistics are made up on the spot, but I think that number is right. I read it a while ago, and I want to say it was somewhere around that. So if they don't have a smartphone, they can't run an Authenticator app. They have to use SMS. So the problem is that we have a lot of security people that will rant, myself included, will say, wow, this is awful, but they don't talk about the nuances. And then what happens is you get a reporter that'll talk about it and they'll, and you get a headline that's awful. And then you get something like anything on a cell phone is insecure. Look, your cell phone is not a secure device compared to it's not the most secure device you have. Okay. So my answer, and I've ranted a little bit, I know, I'm sorry, but here's what I say. If you can use something like an Authenticator app or passwordless stuff or whatever, use it. If you can't, right, going to two-factor via SMS is better than not using two-factor, okay? Now, if you are building a system, if you're the system architect or you're buying a system, you're bringing a vendor-based system in, absolutely evaluate their system and say, do you offer something other than SMS-based two-factor authentication? If their answer is no, buy a different system, Okay, because that's an organization that doesn't understand security well enough to be in your organization. Make it clear to the salesperson they're not getting a sale because they're not secure enough. Okay, but phones are better than nothing, but not as good as they could be. Does that make sense? I hope that answered it.
Great. We still have several more questions in the queue, which is great. The next one is, what password manager do you recommend?
I love LastPass. We use LastPass here at Secure Ideas. We use the enterprise version of it. So we've got, all the different stuff there. We pay for it. There are other ones. I've heard good things about Dashlane, I think it's called. We used to use OnePass. OnePass. But the cross-platform stuff was not real great when we switched over to LastPass. But I recommend LastPass. Keep in mind, yes, Bitwarden. I just saw the thing. Bitwarden, I've heard really good things about it. I've never used it, so I don't want to say, oh yeah, it's great, because I haven't used it. Not that because I didn't use it, it's bad. Just I don't know it well enough to say. The one thing to keep in mind about LastPass, a lot of people got really mad recently. You used to be able to run LastPass for free on your phone and your computer. Just recently, LastPass said, you know what, we need to make some money. So please, if you use the free version, you have to pick whether you use it on your phone or your computer. I get the outrage about that. I understand it. People feel betrayed, whatever. Look, it's a company. They got to make money somehow. I'm not going to say they made the right decision or the wrong decision, but just be aware that if you go with the free version of LastPass, you have to pick which you use it on. So.
All right. Regarding security with my deployments, I employ zero trust methodology. What is your perspective on this approach?
So you got to be a little careful with zero trust methodology when you say it, is because a lot of times it's marketing. I'm assuming you're not using it as a marketing term, that what you're saying is every device is treated as, I don't trust you. You have to be validated, you have to be vetted, you got to authenticate, and you have to be authorized, right? Great, awesome. I like what the zero trust methodology means. Let's be clear. We build systems, right? And we had this really crunchy outside, right? We'd have a PIX firewall, I don't know why I mentioned PIX, but let's go with it, right? But our inside was smushy. And if somebody got past the firewall, they got everything. Then we started getting better, and then we got better, and then we got better. And then we stopped, we don't have a perimeter. The perimeter doesn't exist. No, the perimeter does exist. It's just different. We allow remote access in. We allow business partners in. We let vendors come in, right? So moving to a zero trust model with every system, every user, every access has to be validated is good. Keep in mind, though, that there is always some level of trust. And what I mean by that is my laptop here. When I connect to my laptop and I try to connect to any of the systems here at Secure Ideas, I have to authenticate. I have to prove that I'm me. But once I've authenticated that system, there is a period of time where there is a trust from me to it. And if my machine gets compromised, right, there's a window where the attacker has access to that thing. That window may be ridiculously small, okay? But keep in mind, there is some level of trust. So don't, and the reason I pointed out is I've seen a lot of people, they'll go, well, we have zero trust, so everything's safe. Like, no, I've actually had organizations that we've worked with that we've looked at their stuff, we've tested their stuff, and they've not detected us getting in, right? Like we're doing the penetration test, and we get in, and they don't detect it. And when we talk to them, it's like, well, we have a zero trust model, so we don't monitor our logs. What? And they're like, well, we don't have to monitor our logs because we have zero trust. It's like, but no, you have. You're nuts. So don't go to the extreme.
Thank you. I have two final questions. The first one is a scenario. It's Kevin. I'm a large shareholder in Lucasfilms. I want to come to Jacksonville to speak with you about a project, but to establish that those that we do business with are authentic, we ask that you, as one of these carefully selected parties, send us your credit card number so that we can pay for our hotel costs in Jacksonville. We will not use the card for anything else. We'll pay the cost of air travel ourselves. We look forward to hearing from you. The question is, would you send your information to this inquiry?
Absolutely. Now, I'm going to warn you. The reason I would is first, you're a major shareholder in Lucasfilms. Why would you lie about that? Of course you are, right? That couldn't possibly not be true. I'm going to give you my credit card number. And the reason I'm going to give you my credit card number is I don't care. I have very little liability with my credit card. Bad example. No, I'm not going to fall. That's awesome. Thank you very much for writing all that out. That was great. I love it. So one of the things to keep in mind about me is I have lived my recent life as if everything about me is public. My social security number has been compromised so many times. It's not a private number. My credit cards, I had a problem. And let me be very clear. I switched banks after this. I used to bank at Bank of America. And I want to be clear, I'm not bad mouthing Bank of America. I was an employee. I had to bank there. It was a requirement. If you wanted direct deposit, you had to have a bank account there. So my card, I got a phone call one day and they're like, hey, Mr. Johnson, you know you're in trouble when they call you by your last name, right? Mr. Johnson, your credit card has been compromised. We're going to send you a new one out, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yeah, that sucks. No problem. And so it'll be there within 2 days, let's say. Okay, great. Click, done. I verified it was really Bank of America. They didn't ask for any sensitive information. I went into my account. Sure enough, a notification inside my account that I was getting a new credit card. Next day, phone rings, answer it. Mr. Johnson. Yes, it's Bank of America, fraud department, blah, blah, blah. Your card got compromised, blah, blah, blah. Like, man, that sucks, but you're too late. You guys called me yesterday. You've already shipped me a new card. It's okay. I guess they didn't click the flag or something that they already reached me. And they're like, oh no, Mr. Johnson, this is a new compromise. I was, well, how's that possible? You canceled my card yesterday, and I only have one with you. And they said, oh, this is your new card. I said, I haven't received my new card yet. This is just, Mr. Johnson, we're aware of that, but your card has been compromised and we have to send you a new one. And I'm like, what? This is great. So I just live everything. I've got my social security. It's public. It's out there. My credit cards are out there. So I'm the worst person. I just assume everything's credit, but I love the phishing attack. That would be so awesome. Cool. And you said there was another, sorry.
Yep, this is your last question.
Awesome.
What is the safest web browser?
Oh, the safest web browser. Lynx. It's a text-only web browser you use at the command line. Now, I'm assuming that you mean the safest web browser that's useful. Brave is pretty good. Seen really good things there. What I do is I run multiple browsers. So I use Chrome for my day-to-day. I'm just surfing the web, doing stupid stuff. I use sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I use Firefox for my job when I'm doing a penetration test, stuff like that. And then I use Microsoft Edge for online banking and sensitive stuff. Now, I want to be very clear. Do not take that as, well, Kevin just said Microsoft Edge is the safest browser. I did not. I use Microsoft Edge because I hate the browser. It's an awful browser. And so by using a different browser for my normal web surfing, whatever, than I do for my sensitive transactions, my banking, my stuff like that, if this browser gets compromised, they don't have access to anything in this browser. Now, if they're able to pivot out of the browser onto my workstation, that's a different conversation. But things like cross-site request forgery flaws won't impact my banking or my sensitive stuff because there is no active session in that normal browser. So I run multiple browsers based on what I'm doing. But if you're going to run one, Brave is the one to do it. It's a privacy-based browser. It's really good to help prevent tracking and stuff like that. So I hope that helped.
That does. Thank you. That was our last question. If you want to wrap up, and I understand you might be introducing our featured closing speaker, Mr. Brent Lister.
Yes. So I want to say thank you very much, everybody. Please, I hope you enjoyed this. The only thing, here is my only sales pitch for the day. If you work with a nonprofit charity, Secure Ideas services are 100% free for that nonprofit charity. So please have them reach out to us. We want to help out, everything else like that. I'm not a good salesperson because I'm selling the one free thing we do. But we want to help out nonprofit charities that can't afford security services. So I'm finished with everything. I'm glad of the questions. Thank you very much. I'd like to introduce Mr. Brent Lister. He is the CEO of First Florida Credit Union. And without the generous support of First Florida Credit Union, we just wouldn't be able to do events like this. So Mr. Lister, thank you very much for everything. I hope you have a good day. Enjoy, everybody.
Good afternoon. I'm Brent Lister, President and CEO of First Florida Credit Union, and I want to thank everybody for their time today. And our session was kind of multi-featured. We had some breakout sessions, and then with the last hour and a half with Mr. Kevin Johnson, and wanted to thank all the participants that have attended. I also want to thank the presenters on our workout or breakout sessions, Professor Hildenberg, Professor John Lyon, Susan, Aaron Weiss, and also our very own Director of Information Security here at the Credit Union, Daniel Sullivan. I was in and out of some of those sessions and really got a lot of good information. And in fact, some of the information that we shared in the breakout sessions was then kind of re-emphasized with Kevin Johnson's presentation. And I want to give a special thank you to Kevin Johnson. May the force be with you, and appreciated your expertise and your energy for the presentation. I think I gained new knowledge on a lot of things, and information security is a 24/7 hour focus at First Florida Credit Union, because we have all of our member data on our systems and the importance of that. So I appreciated your presentation. I'd like to also, as we wrap up, thank FSCJ and the Speakers Series and all the volunteers that helped put this together. They spend a lot of time on creating the content and then finding great participants to present. And you're always welcome to go to the FSCJ website. They have a business series link, and then you can always see the next events going on. And so as we close out today, once again, I want to thank everybody that participated as attendees and the time that you gave us today, as well as the presenters, the time you gave in preparation, as well as today's presentations. I thought everybody did a wonderful job. And then lastly, just thank once again Dr. Avendano and his staff for all you do, not only with the students, but also in the communities. I wish everybody would research the things that FSCJ has to offer for current students, future students, and then also the programs that enhance the communities within the Jacksonville area that they support. It's really amazing as you dive deep into the things that FSCJ is doing. Just they give so much back to the community. So with that, have a great afternoon, and thanks again for attending. Have a good day.